Today you'll know what to do, and yes, you are getting homework today. I think it's a pretty straightforward assignment, but you'll need graph paper, and there's a couple problems I'm going to have you ignore the book directions and do what I want you to do.
Mr. Wood, is that acceptable?
So, okay, here we go. First, the first type of problem, and I'm going to try to go in order with the three types, just so you know.
Is this in our book?
Yeah, these are pretty much the same style what you're going to have in the beginning. Okay? Okay, first parts. All right, here's what they're going to ask on the first question. It's going to ask for, it wants end behavior, and it wants you to explain why it has a certain end behavior to the tails.
Opposite.
So, okay, say it again.
Opposite.
Okay, the tails are going opposite directions.
And they're
Tails go opposite directions. Now why?
because it has a pause. Or wait, no, it's odd power.
Okay, good. So the tail's going to go opposite directions. This is exactly what you write. This is what I want to see on your paper. The tails go opposite directions because of the odd power. Because of the odd exponent. Okay, odd exponent. Okay, next. Which way are they going to go though? Like where? Because you're saying they go in opposite directions.
Like this away. Whee!
Okay, so we're saying the bottom goes. The bottom one is the left tail.
It's a negative infinity.
So left tail goes towards, nice, good word usage, goes towards negative infinity. And then that means the right tail goes towards
That's
positive.
not how you spell infinity. It needs a Y. It just needs a Y.
Negative infinite.
Infinite. Where's my green?
Selectively permeable.
Okay.
membrane.
Alright, so left tail goes towards negative infinity, the right tail goes towards positive infinity.
How do you make your blood pressure go?
Go
You get
towards
mad.
Positive infinity. Alright, now, the reason why, if you don't know why this is working, it's all based on the number out front, that leading coefficient. This number tells us where the tail goes. If it's negative, it flip-flops. So that means, in this case, the power of 3, traditionally the tails go opposite directions because of odd powers, but since it's positive, this is what it basically looks like.
Can I just draw a picture for the
It wants it to explain it in words, and I want you to keep explaining it in words. It's just good practice.
left and goes to negative infinity, that part can I do in picture form?
No, just write it like that. Just quick.
Just write it.
Just write like left. You can just write left, negative infinity, right, positive infinity. You can write that.
Yeah.
Could we have
They want you to get
right,
practice with,
infinite?
explaining it, because we're going to need that someplace.
Right.
Okay?
What is today's date? 10/1?
1.
Right.
Okay, alright. Hey, do we feel comfortable with the first types of problems?
Yes.
No.
I think you're going to have 4 of those. Pretty straightforward. Okay, let's go to the next type.
What period is it?
Second type.
That's
fact,
all
I'm
we
gonna
have
need
to
a
do
graph
now.
here.
Iron
You're
fire.
gonna need a graph.
I'm going to need a graph. Alright, this one you will definitely want. This is a new one we have not seen before. Which is kind of fun. I kind of like them.
It's fun.
It's fun.
If this was your job, if this is all you did, would it be fun to you?
Yes, it is fun.
It is his job.
This is my job. And
No,
it is
just what he's showing us.
Yes, I like this.
I don't know what it is, and I know
You'll like
what
it. You'll like it. Very much. Very.
I'll share us from upper level points, and she said, ooh, this is math, I like this.
It's pretty straightforward. I don't know if it's popping.
One time,
Mr. Ward, would you like me to troubleshoot
No.
your projector?
So the screen is in the light green.
No.
Oh, it's
I
going.
did notice that, but I was running out of time.
I told you I could troubleshoot it for you.
Very
I don't know. Do you want to hear a story about this weekend?
Mr. Ward.
I went to Orange Leaf.
Oh, geez, that was really small.
Mr. Ward, have you tried restarting?
Already restarted.
What about Desmond?
Okay.
You did.
Alright.
Well, we'll call NGT and get it fixed.
Okay. Alright, so we have my graph. What they're going to do for you on these, it's like the middle ground. I think it's the 17 through 20-ish. What they're going to provide you is a graph like this. And they'll tell you the numbers that you're actually passing through.
Mr. Ward, I got a new iPhone.
Yes.
Guess
Okay.
what kind?
Well, let's see.
You're not guessing. He's focusing on the map.
Yeah. There we go. And that's full speed there.
Wait, but like, what kind of iPhone do you think she got?
iPhone 10.
No.
X.
No.
I don't know.
6.
Yeah, you're
Isn't
close.
this 10 to
That's a good
X?
phone. Alright.
Isn't that
That's a good
exercise?
one.
That was a nice one. Alright, now
It
hey,
was a nice one.
okay, what you're looking at here is you're looking at a graph. Now, what type of graph is this?
That is a.
That is a math graph.
That is
No.
a parabola.
Nope,
That is
definitely not a parabola. How do we know what type of graph it is?
Eclipse.
Oh, it's to the third degree because it turns.
Wait,
twice.
well,
Okay,
what were you
it's
looking
a
turns twice.
third degree, it turns twice. That's what I'm looking for. So, this is a cubic function of some form, okay? It's a cubic function because this thing is actually turning twice. It went from, as I go left to right, feet off the table please.
Feet on the table.
As you're going up from negative infinity up, stop. So, as you go up, it's going to turn direction, so that's one turn, and then it's turning the second time, and so it goes to positive infinity. It turned twice. The turning points, the number of turning points, this did 2, is always 1 less than the exponent. So this is the actual form where you can write it like this. Now, what they want is you to figure out the generic formula that it could be for this type of problem. And what it means by this is you have to use these dots, and that's where they're very specific on the dots they gave you. Sometimes they just write the numbers down in a very plain white graph with no grid. Sometimes they will put the specific coordinates down like this. They all work the same way. So let's walk through how this works. You need to use the x-intercepts first. Whatever x-intercepts you have, write those down. It could be 1, it could be 2 of them, because maybe it doesn't hit the x-axis the second time or third time. But write those down like this. So they're going to be the first 3 coordinates that we're going to multiply together. So this one is a -4, so that's represented by
X
this.
plus 4.
Yeah, x plus 4. That's the term that represents the negative root. The next one is x minus 3, I should say, because that's positive 3. And then we have a 5, which would be x minus 5. Okay, so these are my 3 x-intercepts. We're going to eventually FOIL. You are correct. But we're going to make this a lot easier than just doing that. Because FOILing it out is going to be kind of a pain. We need to also find out how to get that y-intercept. The y-intercept is hitting 2. We're not going to add another parenthesis because it's a y-intercept. So what we have to do is we have to figure out how we can hit that number. So there's some multiplier here that's allowing me to hit this coordinate right there. Some multiplier in general is allowing me to do that. So there's some number they're going to multiply on, so we're going to eventually have to FOIL. But what is that coordinate though?
Positive 2.
It's what, 0, 2? That's the coordinate where that y-intercept is. It's hitting the positive 2. So this is my x number, this is my y number, and we're going to plug it in and see what we can get. Okay, so it looks like my x's are all zeros. This a is going to stay in a, and I'm getting eventually a 2 out of this thing for the y-intercept. It's hitting 2 when I plug in 0 to all these x's. Because that's how you do a y-intercept. You plug zeros in all the x's. And somehow it's it's turning into a 2. So that's why I'm plugging the 0, 2 in, and this will help me figure out what that a number is. Okay, because this is like the generic look of it, but I need to figure out that number right there. That way I know exactly what this thing is going to look like, so we don't have to FOIL it all together.
60,000.
So what is that? That's 4 times a -3 times a -5, and that's times a, and this will be equal to 2.
I take it.
So what is that? 20, that's 60, positive 60, and
130.
this is 60,
A equals
we're
30.
taking times a, and a equals 2, and you have to divide it over. It's not 30, it's what?
Oh, wait, no, it's
1 over 30? 1/30? So when you divide that 60 over,
I'm so excited to be
so when you divide this over, you can simplify that fraction down. If you can, just leave it, but this is 1 over 30 and it's positive. I divide it over. That's the number that goes out front. So my generic formula for this thing is taking everything we just did and replacing the a with the number we just found. Okay, so that's the 1 over 30. 1 over 30. This is what I'm looking for. The book says differently. Like what Reese, you said earlier, like, do we have to FOIL it out? The book asks you to do that. I don't want you to.
You don't want us to.
The reason why, you're going to waste a lot of time FOILing. You already proved to me in that first chapter you can do it, because we had to FOIL a lot of different things. I want you to write this. This is the generic formula. If you ever needed to know what that formula is, you could type it in a graphing calculator, you could type it into Wolfram Alpha, and they could FOIL it all out for you automatically. But I want to know the generic. Now, if this is like a 5th root or a quintic function, you would have a 5 here as the generic, but we'd have to figure out like all the spots where the x-axis hit. If it only hits once, fine, put one coordinate in, but you know that we have to hit a certain number for the egg, because there's a multiplier there. Okay, is there any questions with how I did that?
No.
No, sir.
Okay, make sure that you're doing that. I think that's the middle ground, 17 through 20, and I think 22 is the same way. Okay, the last few, 30 through 30, 30, I guess 30b, that's just the one I want you to do, and then 36 through 38 is where they're going to give you a rational function, and they want you to graph, well, I want you to graph, to figure out the x-intercepts, y-intercepts, if there's asymptotes, all that good stuff. There's only 4 you're going to have to graph, 30b, 36, 37, 38, 4. I'm going to give you the graph for just 4 of them. So, are we kind of ready for that last style problem? Does everyone have this written down?
Let's do it.
Okay, last one today.
Yeah.
Last problem. Okay, this is the last one.
Because I have a headache. Because I have a headache.
Oh, they give you a headache?
High school was a 95.
Which makes me
Okay.
like.
All right, these are the ones we were doing on Friday and Thursday last week. I guess Friday and Wednesday last week, we were starting to talk about the different forms of functions and how to graph them. Okay, all right, here we go. Let's go with 3x squared plus x minus 2. And we're going to divide this by x squared minus 1. Actually, let's go x squared minus 6. Keep it kind of generic. I don't want things to cancel out.
Different squares.
Okay, say it.
Difference of squares.
Okay, we have a different squares on the bottom. What about the top?
Oh,
We got something going on.
Yes.
yes. yes.
What do we have?
Nothing.
Something.
Numbers.
What is it? How many?
We have numbers
Three,
and variables.
three.
Trinomial.
Trinomial. Thank you. All right. So here's what I'd like you to do right now. Factor this apart, top and bottom, and stop there. I'm going to walk around the room. I want to see you factoring. Don't tell your neighbors. Let's see if you can factor that using a trinomial and a difference of squares.
Factor like you're dead.
I'm gonna tell you.
Okay. Hey, let's try to factor. I want to see it in your notes. This is one that I want to see. And if you have graph paper, take that out. They provided graph paper the other day for everybody. So let's factor these apart. We're going to graph this one.
It was so sad.
The top one is big.
Two.
Oh, you just take out
Them both. There's a third don't need. No, there's
You
two.
just take out.
That's right. Yes,
You promised to be back.
I don't know.
I think it would be negative 2 and a positive.
Yeah, no, I was gonna.
Okay.
Because you need to make a 1 in the middle.
So now that's right.
Yes, that's true.
Wait, what is?
I can't tell my neighbors, so I can't tell you.
He's not your neighbor. He lives in Garner. You live by
He's
Hayfield.
the neighbor in the world.
Those are desk mates.
Oh.
Not tell my desk mate what it is.
No.
You guys aren't desk mates. Your desks aren't touching.
Everyone's trying to foil that top out, or factor
the
that top. And that's the part you have to really kind of concentrate on, because it's one of those tricky trinomials where it has that leading number
Is
out.
that right? Also, do you like
I
my
don't get it.
Tricky trinomial.
That is correct.
Look at mine.
Wait, can you just
What is
ignore
the
them?
repetition?
Can you just ignore them? Can you ignore them?
You're going to want to switch the negative sign and the positive sign.
Why?
Ooh.
Yeah, because if you foil it together, that's a negative 3 and a positive 2.
Is that equal to negative
And that'll be a negative 1, not a positive.
What's the bottom? X plus 4, X minus 4.
Yes.
Well, I had
Yes.
it the other way. Come here, you can see
I don't know how to do
the
the
other
top
way,
four,
and then
I
I
need some
flipped it, because I thought it was.
The short, I don't think we have
Negative
this.
Negative
square.
We don't have the
What?
top skills. Yeah, what is the?
Wait, is
it top?
Short is correct.
Plus X or
Negative.
3X.
I don't even know where you want them to check.
Depends where you put the second.
Is it 3x plus 2 and an x
Minus
minus 1?
Switch the plus minus sign.
3x minus 2.
Uh-oh.
X plus 1.
Switch the positive negative sign.
That's what I
So
got.
many people
Well, I
at school today, and
Because you need to get a positive 1 in the middle. You're making a negative. Yeah.
Haha, the word is correct.
What do you mean?
Sleeping.
Yes. Your positive negative sign on the top. The positive negative sign just needs to switch spots.
That's not how you
Positive
say
1.
So,
Yes. Because when you foil, the 3x has to be positive, the negative 2 to make the 1
I
negative.
won't. No, I'm not missing school.
'Cause what you're making is you're making a negative 1 in the middle.
I'm leaving.
It's negative 3.
Yeah, you tried.
Okay.
I mean, it was really.
All right. Anyone else that wants me to double check?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Alright,
I heard him
Switch it
What
to
time?
positive and negative.
So I went negative, so I wrote the opposite.
The reason why it's
Better,
better,
right?
right? One in the middle, we'll talk about that.
Oh, this is how you find the
Just,
y.
it is gonna be something else.
What time is
No,
it?
switch to the
You're
positive.
gonna-
I think we will.
Okay.
I'll probably
Nine.
like.
This is a y.
But you originally had it correct.
Let me check.
Nyack,
Oh, watch this, Justin. Watch this.
How many district wins do we have?
Who said my name?
Let me inscribe this.
One. But we only have one district loss though.
So you
But we only have one district win.
It's good.
We only have one district loss though.
Alright.
They're 1 and 1 in district. That's better than their overall
Okay.
record of 2.
And hey, anyone else in this kind of middle area want me to double check? Okay? Alright, check first up.
Southeast Valley, man.
Thank you.
But
You
they're
wanted
lost.
to-
Okay, good. Alright, so it looks like everyone's kind of ready to go. Now, let's talk about why everyone was kind of getting some weird numbers here.
Belmont.
The Belmont is a.
Belmont.
Hey. Okay. Alright, the top is a trinomial. I know a lot of people want to go plus minus. What I would do is figure out how to make that 1 in the middle. This is kind of what everyone was doing, 3x and 1x. The 2 and the 1, you got to have a negative here and a positive in the back. The reason being is that I need to make a positive 1 here. So that means when I do first, outer, inner, last, the outer and inner are making this term. This will make a positive 3x and a negative 2, which makes 1. Because a lot of people are putting the negative sign in the back, but you're making a negative 1 in the middle because the 3 would have became negative. So this is important that you actually look at the sign here. The back symbol, you guys were doing it right, plus minus. You got to make sure you put them in the right spots.
You know what confused me for a while? I thought they were both supposed to be the same sign.
Oh, yeah. All right, and on the bottom, I think everyone just did this one immediately right. It's the difference of squares. I don't see any problems with that. Now, none of these terms drop out, so we don't have to worry about like an indeterminate spot where it's it's a removable discontinuity.
Can you write that X again?
This one. Sorry. There we go. But what we have to do is we have to graph. This thing has 2 x-intercepts.
-4, +4.
No, those are the asymptotes.
Oh.
What we need to talk about is the x-intercepts. It's where these things equal 0. So
Well,
one of
which
them will be -1.
And it's gonna be
Positive
positive 2/3.
Okay, good. Positive 2/3 and a -1. Now, how you do that? You set each one equal to 0, and then you just solve for x. So I'm hitting a 2/3 that's in this area. Just kind of ballpark it. And then the -1 is the other one. Okay, now, the next part, y-intercept. We'll get to the vertical asymptotes here in a second. The y-intercept, you plug zeros into everything and see what comes out here. When I plug zeros into everything for y-intercepts, because again, these were x-intercepts, the y-intercept is 0 plus 0 minus 2, and then 0 minus -16 is -16, so these will cancel out for the y-intercept. And so it looks like it's what, 1/8?
Yeah.
So there's your y-intercept. Boom. Okay, questions at all about what we have so far?
No.
Okay, next. This thing will have a vertical asymptote at 2 different places.
4 and -4.
4 and -4. The reason why is the bottom, the denominator, determines vertical asymptotes. So that's 4 and -4. So we need to put a dash line. Now these are rigid. We're not going to use that term that I was hearing earlier and what Justin put on the board last week.
Yeah.
Semi-permeable
Selectively
membrane.
permeable membrane.
There you go.
Permeable membrane.
We're not using that. These are rigid.
Would you like me to
We
write it
don't.
again?
No. No.
So vertical or rigid?
Okay.
So this would
Is
be
that what
compared
you're
with the
telling
cell
me?
wall.
Yes.
Can you write
This
that?
is not. We're not going through the cell wall. Okay. All right. So these are very rigid. Now we do have a horizontal. So how I know this? How we know that we have a horizontal? Is the top power bigger than the bottom power for the greatest degree?
No.
No. If it's not bigger than the bottom, the numerator isn't bigger than the bottom, you do have a horizontal asymptote, that selective permeable membrane. Okay? So, where this one will have it, it'll have it at 0. Or, sorry, not 0, but the number where you divide these numbers out front. So if the powers are the same, like x squared and x squared, they have the same degree, you divide the top number by the bottom of the leading coefficients. So this thing will have a horizontal at 3. Now, this one, yep, this should be on one of your graphs.
Are we
Just-
gonna use it?
Well, this is just so you know what to do on these last 4.
We can just do a mock picture.
Yep, mock picture. So if you want to draw kind of a, but that line, that horizontal asymptote is permeable. You can actually go through it. It's kind of squishy.
So why is it there?
The idea is that why we have it is because the end tails will actually hug up against it. That's when you actually have horizontals where the power isn't bigger than the bottom. That means the end behaviors, the tails will actually hug up against it and they
Can you
won't
tell
go to
us the
like
rules for
positive
finding
negative.
horizontals?
Yes. All right. So let's talk about those
We never
rules.
actually did that.
Yep. I need a towel.
Wait, the rules for horizontal
Yep.
asymptotes?
There's 3 rules.
It is kind of squishy.
It is squishy.
This
Okay.
is working.
Oh, okay, all right, here we go. For horizontals, these are the 3 rules for horizontal asymptotes. Okay, rule number 1. If the numerator, that's the top, if the numerator is greater than the denominator,
Oh, I remember this.
yep. If the numerator is greater than the denominator, and what I'm talking about is the highest degree. That's what I'm talking about. Highest degree.
Then it's at 0.
Then you have no horizontal.
Oh, wait.
So the top is bigger than the bottom. There is no horizontal asymptote.
Oh, it's the other way around. So
Yep. There's no horizontal asymptote. So that's rule number 1. Well, we don't have that. The top is not bigger than the bottom for the greatest degree. So we definitely have a horizontal somewhere. If they're the same power, this is rule number 2. If the numerator is equal to the denominator in power, then your horizontal,
Already denominator.
the horizontal is
At
the
0.
leading coefficients divided, or is the quotient of the leading coefficients, is the quotient of the leading coefficients, the leading numbers. And that's what we have. So there we go. So that's what we have. Our power was exactly the same as top and bottom. So you just divide the 2 leading coefficients and that's where your horizontal will be. And again, the horizontal is not rigid. It's just a guideline where the tails are going to be or where it's going to hug up against in the middle of my drawing if you have a bunch of different drawings. Like we have 3 distinct pictures here because the verticals separate that I have 3 distinct graphs. And now the last one, and this is, I think somebody was even saying this one earlier.
The diagonal.
Oh, that's slant. We're not at slant yet.
No, this is one where it says
You're
0.
not ready for that,
Nope.
Tom.
Slant, we're not getting to that
This
yet.
is one where it says 0.
Yeah.
When you're
If
not
the
prepared.
numerator is less than the
Maybe
denominator,
someday.
and it doesn't matter by what, if the numerator is automatically smaller in degree than the denominator, the horizontal is at 0.
My hands are big.
Is at 0.
You should show us an
What are
example
you
of
here,
each.
here?
Okay. We will get there. Today we're just doing this one. On, what was that, Friday that we had
Yeah.
class?
Yeah.
I did, I think I did
Quarters, and then 11 quarters.
that one. We did number 3 on Friday.
3?
The top was smaller than the bottom. I put squares on the bottom.
It's fine.
Okay,
You can watch the video.
I can watch the
now, hey,
video up there.
Doesn't show
yes,
before.
all the videos are up. I made sure the last time. I forgot to
Are the
post
grades in?
Yes.
Yes.
tests and stuff around. So,
His last name.
okay, except for the retakes. Some people have retake
What
action.
about like when I like fix my mistake on my homework and put it on your
No, I haven't got to them. So, alright, hey, okay, next. We have to graph this. So to figure out these other locations, like where this graph is going, it's probably doing something like
Do they
this,
keep like?
probably doing something like this, and probably like this again, because again, these are usually pretty symmetrical, the way that they look. How do we know where it's gonna be? This is where you have to plug in a few numbers or type it in a graphing calculator and check in a couple of the tables. I wanna get just a general sense of where this thing's going. I can already tell by this middle area where I'm hitting the x-axis, so the other spots are probably the opposites of it. That's just how they work. They're always opposites because everything is very symmetrical across these pictures. So I'm expecting that. Now, to give you an idea, like the graph, if you want to use Desmos, you can do that, but I want to get a general sense of where this thing's going. The type of stuff I want to see on homework is that you're factoring it apart. You're telling me x-intercepts, y-intercepts, the horizontals, the verticals. Then you can type in the other numbers, or you can type the problem into your graphing calculator or Desmos to see where those general tails go. It should be a generic look where you don't have to type in a bunch of numbers into it. We're making like tables and stuff. But let me just type this in a graphing calculator just so you can see this. I'm gonna get rid of this graph here. This is what it should look like. Let's go to my graphing calculator here.
Dude, that's messed up.
Okay, all right.
I don't know why I felt the need to say that. I'm sorry.
Give me the pencil.
Yes.
I cannot reach it.
That was
You give me my pencil as well.
Okay. All right, we're gonna tape this thing in, and the reason I'm leaving it up there because I need to see it. Yeah, I just need to use the trial version still.
She said.
Okay.
Mr. Ward, what's your favorite math website?
Definitely Wolfram Alpha. By far.
MrWard.org?
That's just my, my
And then
personal.
I
I would consider it a
All right.
math website, however.
Okay. 3x squared. What do we have? Plus x.
Minus 2.
Minus 2.
Minus 2. Okay. Plus x minus 2.
I don't know that.
Minus 2. Close that parenthesis off. Divide by parenthesis x squared minus 16.
Correct.
Do you think this calculator recognizes
What-
this is the
What
difference
symbol
in
are you
squares?
going to use at the end? What grouping symbol is that?
Parenthesis.
Yep.
Alright. Let's go to the graph. I don't know. Oh, I need to zoom out. Alright, zooming window. Let's go from negative 12 to 12. Because that's what your graphs are going to be in. Negative 12 to 12. Let's go by ones. Let's go to negative 12 to 12.
Who messed it up with?
I was probably typing it in from last week.
Why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
There you go. So it is pretty close to what we had. So it definitely has kind of has a horizontal at 3. And I said the tails usually hug those. That's why when you have horizontals, the outside tails usually follow. They're very symmetrical. And what gave it away in my drawing without even having to type in any numbers is because the x-intercepts and y-intercepts, everything is usually opposites on every time you flip from like the left of the vertical to the right. Usually the pictures always flip opposites. So that's kind of where I knew where to go. So if one's up, the other one's down, then it goes up again. Okay, question?
It's a horizontal.
Yeah, horizontal is at 3.
But why do they still make the calculator pixelated when it's on a computer?
I don't know, if I go to the other one, because this is the 84, it's trying to mimic what the 84 would look like. If I go to like the newer calculators, like the, what do they call them, Inspire calculators, it'll be very smooth.
Can you show us?
Yeah, it's just, I'll have to type it.
What's the one that you
Oh,
had
you
that
don't
you
have to do the exact
smashed?
same one, just
Okay.
type in a random graph.
Yeah,
Mr.
we're
Ward.
gonna see.
I'll type it in while you're doing it.
Can you type in y equals x?
On the board.
So in favor.
Okay, hey, the different instructions here. On 30B, 36 through 38, I want you to graph. I'm only giving you a graph with 4, because there's only 4 that you have to draw. Very generic, I just want to see kind of where they're going.
Ridiculous.
But you have to label the vertical, horizontal, intercepts if they fit. You can put them off the side, you can even rescale if you need to, if like the numbers are way out of bounds. But, yep. I just want to make sure everyone gets 4 graphs though. Make sure that you're taking your time writing these down. This is due on Wednesday. It's kind of short turnaround because a lot of the problems are just like explaining words, what's happening with NBA here. Or try to come up with a generic formula for this graph.
When does it do?
This is Wednesday.
Mr. Ward, who's
Are you
your
sure?
favorite NBA player?
Favorite?
Current.
D Rose.
I like Draymond Green.
Why?
I like his defense. I like his
So
defense.
controversial.
I know, but I like his defense.
Do I need 2?
Oh, sorry.
He likes to take it away.
Like he might be like literally the one.
He's a good team leader, and he he can get after it. He can get after players, but that's what makes him a great teammate. Because he isn't afraid to like play on the
Read
line.
those to me, I get really
Yeah,
confused.
I think he's gonna make a great coach.
Who
None of
else?
them.
What?
5
Who
through
else?
8,
Because Nico's
17 through 20,
You like Lonzo Ball?
No.
22,
Oh, don't get me wrong. He's a good basketball player.
28.
Don't get me wrong. He is.
You don't
I
like
just-
his family?
Yeah, I just don't. The family dynamic thing is.
Who's gonna start at point guard for Los Angeles? Lonzo or
Rondo.
Ray?
Rondo.
Rondo starting the preseason.
I know,
LeBron. He plays all 5 positions.
That's for sure.
I don't know how that anyone
Why
can
did
do
you write
this. I think that's just.
So it add,
Like,
so
there's
there's
no-
There is no, but I just love LeBron.
So you have
Like,
to.
that team is literally worse than the team he left in Cleveland.
So
Straight up.
Yeah, we have a higher rating. They have
Yes, but this year they are.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
when
yeah.
I do
Why
it,
are
Some people that were like, oh,
Said each one
Celtics,
equals
Lakers,
zero separately,
finals.
that's how you know where to
Like,
put them and stuff.
It'll be something. It'll be something and the Warriors are gonna destroy them.
I just think it's
How do you know I do that?
Yep.
Warriors better.
That's crazy.
Celtics have
I'm,
right forward.
Okay, so
he's going
I think that the
Sam,
Raptors
correct?
could be dark
Yes.
horse.
And then I go next to something
That's
Yeah.
positive 5.
Don't forget about
Kyrie Irving.
Gordon Hayward, Jason Danielson.
Based on your expertise, what do you think the score of this next week's
Jalen Brown's pretty good too. I like
All right, hey, gentlemen, let's get folks on the map, please.
On the map.
We're cleaning the map. We're gonna try to decide who's gonna win.
Mr. Ward.
How do you raise blood pressure?
Mr. Ward.
Mr. Ward,
I'll look at it.
how do you fix blood pressure that's too
How do you
low?
raise it?
Eat salt.
That's not a problem.
What?
Pills.
Pills.
Alpinephrine.
I'm sorry, I keep
Yes.
Mr. Ward.
I'm so used to
Because right now, I went to back my book, I was like, why do I do that?
I'll look.
I'm not even late.
What?
I'll make that on video.
What kind of
Can I go take my look at my side?
Nielsen, based on your expertise, what do you think the score of the football game will be this
aspirin
Friday?
raised blood pressure.
I don't know. I want to say we're gonna win, but we're probably gonna get it.
Mr. Ward, who are you gonna play?
Because I
What?
do a lot of
Who do you play, Southeast
basketball,
Orange?
Yeah.
Didn't they beat Spirit Lake?
I think
Yeah,
it
we also lost
doesn't raise your blood pressure.
Belmont is good. Why do you keep saying Belmont is bad?
We destroyed the line.
Game that.
Camp, oh my gosh, camp, you're gonna go to the camp.
Oh, caffeine.
Oh my
Anyway,
gosh, I'm pretty
but-
sure the Warriors got beaten training camp too.
Hey, gentlemen, let's focus on map now, please.
Dominated.
Whoa.
Stand up for
What is the calculator that you
But,
have?
my head.
I don't know.
Dizzy.
They're like a run
What
first.
calculator was
So we could have a shot at the stats.
Fire one.
No, I go away.
If they come up fast, then they do well in the passing game against us.
Okay, cool.
What do they cost?
Ibuprofen does.
I
It's just
always
kinda-
recommend it, just because
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind of
really
lazy
easy to
to.
be able to pass these.
Do you have low
Yeah,
blood
color
pressure?
coordinate the graphs, if you have multiple graphs, you can see which one's supposed to be
But
what.
what's about the same?
Fine.
I'm just self-diagnosed.
That's
If you look up high Google, what does it do?
You can borrow it.
No, I gotta pull some stuff away.
It does everything your calculator can
No,
do.
it doesn't. Because
Window.
How do you do the barrel roll thing?
Just type in dual barrel roll.
I can do all
No,
of
I just
the,
did it and then I just did
Press
it.
enter.
What do you have to do?
all this stuff.
Type in dual barrel roll and press enter.
Anyways, I can do everything. I'm just as capable.
Oh my gosh, that gives
That's
me a
not bad.
headache. What's the other one that you can
It's just
do?
really small, so, yeah, a
Oh,
lot
the
of.
gravity
The
one.
one that you have.
Google Gravity.
That you smashed.
Google Gravity?
I didn't smash it.
Or just
Broke my
Google
back.
I want to see
Gravity?
if it will work.
Click on Mr. Do. Click on Mr.
Oh my goodness. How much do you realize
Do.
it cost you?
Yeah, now look up
I
on,
said,
look up an
Oh
image.
my
But
gosh.
I flip it open as
What
well.
size
Just look
is
on the
it?
calendar.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Like storage size
How do I
wise,
look
what
up
is this?
something?
Click on search.
That's the calculator you had?
Click
It
on-
was
That thing is like a.
It was required for all three because it could do multivariable.
Whoa!
That's the
what?
calculator he had.
That doesn't even look like a
You
calculator.
smashed
You
it.
scroll, you go
Wait, it's not
down.
letting me actually search.
You don't go up to
anything.
the little thing, you go down.
Because they don't have a home button.
Before it used to let you.
Button button.
And then it would
It's
all
raining
come on.
so much.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotta run outside.
I actually really like the calculator, but the screen was really big. It was like.
How big is that calculator? That looks huge. It
Um,
looks like a
like
literally
this one?
Xbox
Like
controller.
this, where do you realize that this,
Yeah, it looks like an
It was
Xbox
almost
controller.
exactly the size of
This
what
case
it
is
was nice. It
doing
was like really nice to
I'm not
have it
sure
because I
about
could
my
take
mom.
and solve it.
Oh, this is the
X
Did everything.
Yes.
She goes, oh, all the stuff's in the office, so.
that's really
I hope
cool.
she's right.
What'd you spend last?
Look, maybe it'll work for 20.
Well, I just want to point out the fact that this is probably like the
Did you look
sleekest.
up
No.
What does it do that
What?
the 8
No,
Plus
twice.
did?
Can I buy your 8 Plus from you?
No, my parents
You
bought
want
one.
to see my new phone?
Oh, later.
I'll show you on Wednesday. Okay, but it's.
So we're gonna zip this case.
Whoa, you just tripped on my iPad. Let's hope that didn't break it.
Why do you have an iPad on the ground?
Because I was charging it. Because that's what I feared. Somebody chirping on it.
Wait, what's that, what, it was on the ground?
Huh?
But it didn't fall.
I'm so confused.
But why would you not charge it on your desk then, no, so nobody would trip over it?
Because that would have popped the desk.
Wait, I'm so confused.
Charge it with your
It didn't
computer.
fall.
It was
No.
on the ground.
Oh, hopefully it didn't break
I
it
thought
from
it
its
was-
snowfall.
Oh,
Up here, I thought it fell, but it didn't sound like it fell.
This one height. What are the pictures like? Just take like a picture. I think it was picture
you
quality.
probably have this picture.
How it compares to my
Go.
camera?
Second, see my phone.
Go. We're gonna win.
Dalton,
Yeah,
you're,
totally.
wait, what site, which one you got?
Tessie.
Why did you pay for that?
You should have enough money to
Yeah,
buy
it's
this.
Because it's like $300. The six?
Yeah, I've only had that screen for 6 weeks now.
Oh, don't you get
Yeah,
rid of
6 is like this. Like,
Oh, I meant,
this came out when the 7 came out. So this is like updated 6. I
My
think
dad
so.
has that.
you're gonna get the boot soon.
My dad doesn't have the App Store.
A couple years.
He's had an iPhone for like 4 years and doesn't know how to make an app look.
Ooh, I like how little it is.
What does he do on it?
Calls and texts. He's never downloaded an app. He checks the weather a lot because the weather app comes on.
Oh, that was.
Hey, gentlemen, let's get your books out. Let's get to work.
He goes on the Safari and checks the markets at least once a day.
I'm sure there's how to do that. I'm sure there's an app for the markets. Oh,
Mr. Ward, look at this, what I have.
The app's because he doesn't have an Apple ID.
But isn't he sure? Like,
Well, I have a folder inside
doesn't
my
really
notebook
have any
for
apps to
1,
download.
for 2.
so
I
is
have a lot
his
of
phone completely
information
blank?
in this.
Yeah, but
Do you see this?
He has no apps.
Look at this.
It's just the, you know, when you open it, it's the first page, that's what it is.
It's 10 inches.
So you
that I
have taught him. You think he looks
Pretty accurate, actually.
He texts,
Yeah.
but all of his texts are like max like 4 words without any like
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Does he know what
Yeah.
language?
If you flip it over,
It's
He's
it's
not
also-
like game pigeon.
What?
No.
What the heck am I supposed to do with 17? Do we have to do all of these?
So,
Like
all,
pay for all of it?
yeah, so you're just telling me like, what's the minimum, possible power, so like an X cube drive is
Have
it?
you
For all-
started?
Yeah.
You guys have models here?
So it's like, oh, that should
What
be
are you
like an
doing
X
next?
screw drive, because it turned this many
You
times.
utilize
Or it should be negative, because it's
Your
going
combine
up
does it
first.
first.
You know, that type of thing.
I don't know, we'll figure it out.
9410 did.
So it's just very generic, like you're trying to
Wait,
describe
tomorrow.
things.
Truck 10 does.
Is that 17?
Let's go try to
So
talk to her right
Siri
now.
runs and tracks
See if
with
she'll
us.
let us.
Literally all you have to do is turn, that's it.
No one will rings.
I heard
You're running the
Oh,
stop
then we're gonna be
you
late
just
today.
go straight.
But if we
Click the
run really,
button
really
Look
fast.
at your
No,
phone
we
for a
won't
good
be
10 minutes while you go down the field. Oh, we're at the end, turn,
I wish
click
we
the
had
button
bags.
again.
Bags would be fun to have.
It's so
We
easy.
still wanna
That's
make
like literally what modern farming is if you have like a fully industrial.
No, we would. We ran really fast.
That's how you get the
I'm not
top
that
acres.
I'm fast.
That's one.
You literally, it's just
What
like,
do we
look at
do?
the phone. Literally sit there, it's just time. That's all it
Except for his
takes.
people,
I'm gonna go so
it's not
fast
him,
like,
but his
Yeah.
He sits in his shop and
Are you
watches
doing
them
it?
click the button.
so that I can make it to school.
The cabless trackers
Alright,
have
this is it.
the real like reduction in
Oh, where they just sit there?
where there's no person on the tractor, you can pull it off an iPad and just sort of like do your field and like use that or like notifies you instead when you go out to the field and bring it home.
That would be so cool.
So
How long before they
And they can
add
have
in
more
teleporting?
information.
How long before they'll build in teleporting? Where you just appear on the tractor?
Make a tractor like a semi cab so you can come and wake up and like pretty
No, just make all tractors have sleepers so you can
Mr. Ward.
And then you can super simplify it. so you
No, she said I can get it, but I
Or
charge
if you go
stuff
fast,
in.
you space low, if you fast and speed low, you age slow.
I know, I'm just sitting in there shooting.
That's legit, scientific. I don't know how it works. If you are capable of traveling faster than the speed of light, you age slow.
I mean, actually, Christian, so I
So if you could travel at the speed of light and you left the earth and were gone for like a certain amount of years, you would come back younger than the people that were here the whole time. Physically, you would be younger. You don't age. You age.
Turn off entirely. I'll come back 6th period tomorrow.
Yeah, just we can brainstorm some ideas. This give you a little taste of what we're doing today.